Hello, sir.
Yeah. Hi. Okay. So tell me, they have not done gravitation in Alan, right?
No, like we did a short version like
Uh,
in one class. So
and here with us, you have done gravitation? No,
yeah, yeah.
little bit.
I think we did like fully.
You have completed the chapter.
Yeah,
Okay. So the chapters that are not done are mechanical properties of matter, and we have to do fluids and sound questions, right?
right, yeah.
Sound questions.
Sir, I finished the all the questions of sound, but
Uh,
fluids I still have like
uh,
exercise questions.
Fine. So just try them. If you have any doubts, then we can discuss it in a subsequent class.
Yeah,
So right now, theory, this is left,
yeah,
and thermodynamics. Then after that, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, fine. So we'll start off with this, and if you have doubts and all, we will solve these later. Like right now, we'll not do that. We'll finish the theory.
Yeah.
So mechanical properties of matter. This is not a difficult chapter except for a little portion which is surface tension, which is slightly sometimes it can be annoying. Otherwise, this is fairly straightforward. Okay. So the first thing that he starts off with is the molecular structure of matter, and he talks about how this is the general potential curve, potential as a function of distance. So when atoms or molecules are packed together, right, in any material, right? So this is how U varies. The potential energy of the material will vary according to the distance between the two atoms or two molecules, whatever, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
now this curve you have to understand because force is minus du by dr, right? So
Yeah.
so in this portion, if you see, the slope of the graph is negative, right?
yeah,
Du by dr is negative in this portion till here, right? So force is positive, right?
yeah,
Force is positive means repulsion.
Yeah.
And in this portion, du by dr is positive and force is negative, right? So that means attraction. Okay. So what that means is that if two atoms are placed with separation r between them, right? Now, if they are too close to each other, there will be repulsion. And if they are far away from each other, there will be attraction.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. The reasons for this are obvious. The nuclear repulsion overcomes everything if they are too close, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And otherwise, the electrons are being attracted by each other's nuclei, and that is going to dominate, and that will attract it if it is far away, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
uh, force is positive here and negative here, so force becomes zero at this point, right?
Yeah,
Because it is changing sign from positive to negative, right? So it is becoming zero at this point. Zero at this point. This point is called the stable equilibrium point. Stable equilibrium, where force is zero, or basically du by dr is zero, right?
yeah,
Du
yeah.
by dr is zero means this is like a maxima minima condition, no, for u, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So u is minimum. If u is a function of r, if you have to find maxima minima, you have to take du by dr zero, no?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
and du by dr is zero happens at the stable equilibrium point, which is the point of minimum potential energy, right? So if
Mm.
some particle is left here, then it will try to come this side. If it left here, it will go this side, right? So
yeah,
sometimes you can also see a sort of an SHM. If there is a tiny displacement from the mean position, there will be a sort of an SHM about the minimum position, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the perfect distance. Like this is the interatomic distance in equilibrium, stable distance, right?
Mm.
So
yeah,
you cannot be too close or you cannot be too far away. That is how it is. So most materials are like this. So now because of this nature, if you press a material, right? If you are pushing something, then the atoms on the top surface, top layer, right, are being squished together, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If you are pushing something with a force, you are basically reducing the interatomic distance between the layers of atoms on the top, right?
Yeah.
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 If you are reducing that distance, then you are going beyond, beneath, like below this R, right? R stable, right? So there will be a repulsion.
Repulsion.
So that is the reason why you feel that normal force or you feel tension. All of these forces are as a consequence of these repulsive forces between atoms. Okay.
Yeah.
So repulsive and attractive forces depending on the interatomic separation, right? So basically, this chapter tells you that there is a molecular or atomic interpretation of all of these macro forces that you have been working with so far. You have been seeing tension, normal force, many types of forces, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The actual reality is that all of these forces are due to these interatomic attractions or repulsions, which are actually electromagnetic in nature, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All of these forces are due to charges being separated or charges being pushed close to each other, right?
Yeah.
So that basically explains why we say that all of the forces are electromagnetic except for gravity. Gravity is not like this, but every other force that you have encountered in life so far is electromagnetic, because it is because of these interatomic separation type of forces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the explanation that you need to understand. Now, obviously, he's talking about ionic bonds, covalent bonds, and all. We know all that, so we'll not worry about that too much. Three states of matter. States of matter now. So if the separation at the equilibrium position is quite large, then it will be not be a solid. It will be a liquid or a gas.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And if the separation is small, it will be a solid. Right.
Yeah.
So those kinds of situations are there. You can read it. It is not very difficult. We will go on to elasticity, right? Which is 14.2. And he is talking about a microscopic explanation for elasticity. Now, what is this microscopic explanation? So a solid body is composed of a great many molecules or atoms arranged in a particular fashion. Each is acted upon by forces due to neighboring molecules. The solid takes such a shape that each molecule finds itself in a position of stable equilibrium, right? Normally, the way the solid shape is because in that shape, every molecule is in stable equilibrium, right?
Yeah.
When the body is deformed, the molecules are displaced from their original positions of stable equilibrium. The intermolecular distances change and restoring forces start acting on the molecules, which drive them back to their original positions, and the body takes its natural shape, right? So basically what is happening is you are trying to revert back to your equilibrium position. That is the situation, right?
Yeah.
So that is the reason for all of these elastic properties. Where you stretch a rubber band, it comes back to its normal length, right? So all of these elastic type of properties are because of this tendency or the forces between the atoms and molecules which try to bring you back to your original position, right?
Yeah.
So all the oscillations and all that you can see, right, are also because this variation that was there, right? The potential variation.
Yeah.
So if you displace something slightly from the equilibrium, then it will be pushed back. If you displace it this side, it will be pushed back. These are restoring forces that are acting. So therefore, they can easily cause oscillations or sometimes even SHM, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is clear. Then he talks about stress and strain. So now we have already briefly discussed it once. Stress is just multiple types of stress are there. One is longitudinal and one is shearing stress. Longitudinal, shearing, and later we'll also see volume stress or compressive stress. But right now, what is longitudinal stress? Stress is basically force per unit area of cross section. Okay. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
there is a body like this and you are pulling this end with a force, right? So you are applying a force on a particular area of cross section. So that force by area ratio is called stress.
Right.
So it is almost like a pressure, right? Force by area is
Yeah.
pressure also, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a pressure. So suppose your area was in a twisted way and force was like this, right? Area of cross section was like this, correct?
Yeah.
Basically, you have a tube like this, let's say, and your force is applied in an angle, right?
Yeah.
Then what you consider is the force will be considered will be the perpendicular to the area force. So if F is like this and this angle is theta, what you will do is F cos theta is the real force which is normal to it, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Normal
Yeah.
to it is F cos theta. So F cos theta by A. F cos theta by delta A.
Delta.
That will be the longitudinal stress on it, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you can also take the component, you could also take the component of the area which is perpendicular. That also you could have done, right? So
Yeah.
perpendicular to the force, whatever component of the area is there, that you can take, right? So in just before 14.1, he talks about the force F may be resolved into two components. So he's not taking component of area, he's taking component of the force, just like we did earlier.
Yeah.
So he's saying Fn is normal to the delta S and Ft is tangential to delta S, right? Now, these two forces, one force is Ft and one force is Fn. These two forces create two different types of stresses. One is that longitudinal stress that we spoke about, Fn by delta S, and one is the tangential stress, which is Ft by delta S. So tangential stress is trying to slide that layer across, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It may not be successful, but it will try. Like it might try to deform the shape, like it wants to bring this layer this side, right?
Yeah.
So longitudinal stress basically can be of two types. Okay, so longitudinal stress, which is the normal stress, this also he has broken down into two types. It could be tensile or it could be compressive. So tensile is extending, compressive is pushing it smaller, right?
Yeah.
So if you are stretching something, that is called tensile stress. If you are compressing something, that is called compressive stress. But both of them have to be perpendicular to the area of cross section.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And tangential stress is a shearing stress or a different type of stress. So we'll see what the implications of this are. The third type of thing on the next page, he talks about volume stress, right? Volume stress. So suppose a force was applied equally from all directions on a body, right? Correct.
Yeah.
So it is acted upon by forces on all directions. An example could be body is inside a fluid, right?
Yeah.
The fluid exerts pressure from all directions on the body, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So the volume stress will be force by area, which is basically take a small area here, take the force on that area, right? And take the ratio, right? Take the ratio of that, correct? So that is basically just the pressure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Pressure that is acting. So volume stress is the same as pressure. The reason we were not talking about longitudinal stress as the same as pressure was because longitudinal stress was only acting on one side, right? Longitudinal stress was only acting here or something, right? It was not acting here. Generally, when we think of pressure, we think of pressure exerted by fluids and all, which acts everywhere on the surface.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So we don't call that one as pressure so much, but we call this one as pressure because this is like it's acting on the whole body, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the pressure on the whole body, you can say. Correct.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, associated with each type of stress, you will have a strain. So obviously, if you are applying forces, you should see some reaction or something should change in the body as a result of that.
Yeah.
Right. So for longitudinal stress, you will get a longitudinal strain. Similarly, for shearing stress, you'll get a shearing strain or tangential strain. And volume stress, you'll get a volume strain, right?
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
the strain is the reaction to that force. So the way we measure that reaction is del L by L. If it was longitudinal stress, which was pulling or pushing a body.
Okay.
Suppose this was the stress. So after some time, the body could be stretched like this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is the del L and this was the original length, right? So strain is a measure of how effective that force was in making a deformation in the body, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if strain is high, that means the body was easily stretched or it was deformed a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So strain is this for longitudinal stress, for shearing stress. For shearing stress, he has derived in figure 14.5. Okay. So 14.5, you have to see clearly. Look at the figure A, figure part B, and he has a square loop of ABCD, and then he was applying a tangential force on the CD side. Okay, so square loop was there, and he was applying a tangential force like this, as a result of which, after some time, it became like this. The loop became a parallelogram. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is the new position of the loop, and this was the old position, and you want to find shearing strain, right? So what he says is, this is the extra shear that happened. No? This is the extension that happened along the side, right? Correct.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this was the original position. This was the length of this. So basically, how do you measure this extension, right? You want to sort of measure this angle, right? How much it twisted,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So he basically tan of theta would be what? This by this, right?
Hmm.
Correct. So he's writing it as x by h. If this was h and this was x, he's writing tan theta as x by h. And basically, this tan theta is a measure of how much you sheared that body from its original shape, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it is, you have to come up with some way to measure the effect of your strain, right?
Yeah.
Stress. So in the longitudinal case, it was fairly straightforward because length was increasing. So del L by L was a good measure, right?
Yeah.
In this case, you are twisting the body basically. So the way to measure it would be not by a change in length or anything, right? The final parallelogram is still having the same length of the sides and all. No, not
Yeah.
same length, but maybe same length actually. Yeah. This side, however, is changing, right? This might be same as this, but this has increased in length, right? Correct. From
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
right? Because this is now the hypotenuse. So you have to find some way of measuring it. So a convenient way that they have found is, if you take a square cross section and it has twisted like this, then you want to measure how much angle it has turned, right?
Yeah.
So this angle measurement can be done in multiple ways, but the convenient way is x by h, which is tan theta, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this shearing strain is also called sometimes shear. Shearing strain is equal to x by h. So no matter what your cross section looks like, after some time it will be twisted, and you have to measure the twisted cross section and the original cross section, the angle of twist, right?
Hmm.
That is what is being measured here with tan theta, right? Okay. Volume strain now. Let's talk about volume strain. So as a result of pressure acting on a body, you could have a deformation in the body, right? So
Yeah.
volume of the whole body could change, and this is a convenient measure of volume strain, del V by V, right? So if
Yeah.
pressure was acting in a compressive way, del V would have been negative, right? So volume strain could be a negative quantity because del V will be smaller, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
pressure or compressive pressure is acting on the body, del V will be negative and V will be positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could also have expansive pressure, like from internally into the body, you can exert some pressure and it can expand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then in that case, it would be del V would be positive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, once we have understood the types of stress and strain that are possible, we talk about Hooke's law of elasticity. And Hooke's law of elasticity says that stress by strain is proportional, right? Hooke's law says stress by strain is a constant.
Yeah.
For bodies, this is not always true, but it is true for bodies in a certain range. Bodies in a certain range of stress. Basically, what it means is, to a certain point, if you extend a rubber band, it will come back to its original position, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually, it might break. Okay, so some point the Hooke's law will be violated, right? But
Yeah.
suppose this is a string and it's an extendable string, right? To a certain point, if you stretch it, the amount of force needed to stretch this much by the extension will be equal to the amount of force needed to stretch this much by the extension, right? What I'm saying is, stress is the force required, right? Here, let's say F1 was the force. Here, F2 was the force. Basically, F1 by delta X1 will be equal to F2 by delta X2, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not always, because eventually you might exert F3 and the string only breaks, right? At some point, it will stop, it will break, or something will happen. It will be permanently deformed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Hooke's law works only in a certain range of forces, in which this proportionality is there, right? It's a linear
Yeah.
proportionality between stress and strain, right?
Right. Yeah.
That is what is called the spring constant, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
F by del x and F2 by del x2,
Del
right?
X,
That will be
yeah.
same, right?
Yeah.
So he's saying if the deformation is small, the stress in a body is proportional to the corresponding strain. So for small deformations, for a very large deformations, it will never come back to its original position. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for longitudinal, now each case you can find this constant stress by strain and you can call it something. So for longitudinal strain, it is called Y, or Young's modulus.
Right.
Young's modulus for a body basically will be longitudinal stress by longitudinal strain. So F by A del L by L is equal to Y, right?
Yeah.
So now you can find, if you know the Y for a particular body, you can find del L in a different situation without doing any experiments. You can write FL by AY, right?
Right.
Is your del L. So that is longitudinal stress. Now, similarly, you can get many types of stress. Shearing stress also you can get. So in that case, you have F by A by X by H, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
is called coefficient of shear or torsion, modulus of rigidity or torsional modulus. This is Young's modulus. This is modulus of rigidity or torsional modulus. Torsion means twisting. Rigidity or torsional modulus. Torsion basically means twisting. We have seen torsional pendulum, no? In SHM. When you twist a wire, you have done SHM, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you twist a wire and the wire untwists back, right?
Yeah.
You remember that thing? There's a thing here and you are twisting the wire like this, right? And if you leave a wire, then it will untwist back, right?
Yeah.
So the force is a torsional force, or torque is a torsional torque depending on the angle by which you have twisted.
Right. Yeah.
That type of torsion effect also here we can call it. Then third one is bulk modulus, or which is the volume stress by volume strain. So pressure by del V by V is equal to PV by del V is equal to bulk modulus B. Okay. And most of the time, this is defined with a negative sign because del V is generally negative, right?
Yeah.
Mostly pressure is acting in a way that it compresses bodies. So generally, you define bulk modulus as minus P by del V by V because del V is negative and you want bulk modulus, the constant, to come out as positive. Right?
Yeah.
So Now, when you study different bodies will have different values of these constants. This is like the spring constant for each body. Depending on the type of deformation that you want to bring about, the body reacts in a different way, right?
Yeah.
For example, some materials are ductile, right? Some materials are not so ductile, right? Ductility means it can be drawn into wires, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that means that it is easy to stretch it along and make its length longer, right?
Yeah.
So basically that means that Young's modulus is small. If Young's modulus is large, what does it mean? It means the force required, the stress required will be large to bring about an equal amount of strain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you compare two bodies with Young's modulus Y1 and Y2, if Y1 is greater than Y2, that means to bring about an equal amount of strain in both the bodies, you need a higher force in Y1, right?
Yeah.
That body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. So that means it is more resistant to any longitudinal strain, right? It is tougher to stretch that body, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Similarly, basically all of these Y, B, eta, all of these things tell you about the elastic properties of the body and different situations, right? So Y is saying, how can we increase its length? How easy is it to increase its length? Eta is saying, how easy is it to change or twist its cross section, right?
Yeah.
How easy is it to compress it into a smaller volume, right? That is bulk modulus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now after doing some experiments and all, people can basically find the values of these constants for multiple materials. And that will mean that afterwards, then they don't have to do experiments to predict how much extension will happen, right? Because they can use these equations to get the del V or del L or X, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you know the eta, Y and B values, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Now, there is another. Okay, so this last paragraph is important. These things are fairly simple, right? You understood all this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This last paragraph is important where he talks about the Poisson's ratio. Okay, so let's see that in detail. Yet another kind of modulus of elasticity is associated with the longitudinal stress and strain. So what happens when a rod or a wire is subjected to a tensile stress, its length increases in the direction of the tensile force, right? Tensile stress is a longitudinal stress, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a body like this, a cylindrical body, and you are exerting some tensile force, right? A longitudinal force like this and like this, right? So what could happen as a result is that its length increases, no? Both sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, the volume of the material is constant, right?
Constant.
So obviously it should be thinner now if it increases in length.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should be thinner in width, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. So basically it is shrinking in cross-section area and increasing in length, right?
Right.
Correct. So he's saying its length increases in the direction of the tensile force. At the same time, the length perpendicular to the tensile force decreases. No, this radius is decreasing, right?
Yeah.
The length that was perpendicular to the tensile force has decreased to this much, right? Instead of being this much, right?
Yeah.
Correct. So for a cylindrical rod, the length increases and diameter decreases when the rod is stretched, right? So initial diameter was D, final diameter is D minus del D. Initial length was L and final length is L plus del L, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
L plus del L. Okay. Initial diameter was this length and final diameter is this length, right? Okay. Okay. The fractional change. So now he's defining the Poisson's ratio. He's saying the fractional change in transverse length is proportional to the fractional change in longitudinal length. So obviously, this decrease or this delta D should be proportional to how much increase happened, no?
Yeah.
Yeah,
These two
yeah.
values cannot be independent of each other, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So this proportionality is reflected in that Poisson's ratio. So the way he defines that ratio is fractional change, not full change. Actually, fractional change is proportional to fractional change here,
Fractions.
right? So Poisson's ratio is defined as del D by D by del L by L, and minus because del D is decreasing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Poisson's ratio, it has a minus sign also, like bulk modulus, because you have to ensure that the final Poisson ratio comes out to be positive, right? And
Yeah.
Yeah,
here
yeah.
del
Yeah.
D is negative, right?
Hmm.
So that is equation 14.10. That is important. Sometimes questions are asked on this thing. So keep in mind this last paragraph of what is Poisson's ratio and all, right? Fractional change in transverse length. Transverse length means length which is perpendicular to the tensile force is equal to the fractional change in the tensile
Yeah.
strain, or fractional change in the length actually, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Relation between longitudinal stress and strain. So that we have already seen for a small deformation, but for a non-small deformation, what happens if the deformation is not small, right? So far we have seen that stress by strain is constant, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
But it's only true if deformation is small. So deformation is not small, then you have a very complicated curve actually. Complicated situation where different things will happen in different conditions of stress. Okay. So look at figure 14.7. Okay. So for a metal wire that is stretched by equal forces, so that its length increases from its initial position, he is showing you the relationship between stress and strain. Okay. Now, see that there is a straight line graph from origin till point A, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That is the point where Hooke's law is valid,
Yeah.
because stress by strain is constant, right?
Right, yeah.
So that basically means that slope of the stress by strain graph will be fixed. So it is a straight line passing through the origin. Why does it have to pass through the origin? Because when stress was zero, strain is also zero, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. And till point A is fine. This is the less low deformation section, right? When deformation is small compared to the total length, this is what happens. This is Hooke's law. Now, if the strain is increased a little bit, the stress is no longer proportional to the strain. So from A to C, if you think, right? A to actually B, A to B, if you think, right? So stress is no longer proportional or directly proportional to the strain. There is a curve now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So the wire is still elastic here. The wire still comes back to the normal position. However, the constant of proportionality K that was fixed is no longer true, right? Stress and strain have a more complicated relationship here. They are still dependent and the wire is still elastic, but not in the nice manner before, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, point A on the curve. Okay, so earlier he's talking about point A on the curve. That is also called the proportional limit. So till point A, you can call that it is strictly proportional, stress by strain, right? After that, they depend on some powers or some complicated relationship, right?
Yeah.
So, so uh, correct. This means if the stretching force is removed, wire acquires its natural length. So wire will acquire its natural length till point B, okay?
Hmm.
So this is a proportional portion till A, then there is a tiny portion till B, and after that there is a portion after that which is more variable. Okay. So this part, wire is still elastic. Wire is elastic. Okay. However, stress by strain is not constant in this part. Okay. Now, the behavior is shown up to a point B on the curve, or known as the elastic limit. This B point will be called the elastic limit because wire was elastic only till here, right?
Yeah.
A point is called the proportional limit, where stress by strain was constant, right? Proportional limit. This is side is stress, and this side is strain. Okay. Now, what happens after that? Elastic limit is also known as yield point. If the wire is stretched beyond elastic limit, strain increases much more rapidly. Strain increases much more rapidly. For slight increase in stress, right?
Yeah.
Strain has increased by this much, right? Earlier, this much increase in stress had happened and strain was only this much, right? And now there's a slight increase in stress and strain has increased a lot, right?
Yeah.
So the body is changing its shape much more rapidly in this section, right? So in the figure we have, so if the stretching force is removed, the wire will not come back to its natural length now after C. So some permanent deformation will happen. The behavior of the wire is now plastic. This is called plastic zone, or it is no longer elastic. It will not come back to its normal length. There will be some permanent deformation. Permanent deformation will happen. So this is called the plastic zone. At some point, eventually, the body will also break. The wire will break at this point, D. This is called a fracture point. If you push it hard enough or pull it hard enough, eventually it will break. It will be in some plastic zone for some time. And if you continue adding the stress, right, then the wire will break. And this is fracture point D. So you have 4 points that you need to understand: proportional limit point, elastic point or yield point, and permanent deformation point, the plastic limit, right? And finally is the fracture point, right? So now he is talking about the stress corresponding to the point of D, which is the fracture point, is called breaking stress. So whatever was the stress at this point, right? That is the breaking stress. What is required to break the body? My graph here is slightly wrong because this cannot be lower than this. Okay. So because it is breaking type of thing, no. So it has to be higher. It has to be increasing further, right? Something like this. Okay. It cannot be like you have reached breaking stress and then come down, right?
Yeah.
So this is higher than any other point. It is increasing only. And now you have reached the breaking point. Now he's saying, one last paragraph, he's saying, if large deformation takes place between the elastic limit and the fracture point, the material is called ductile. So elastic limit was this B point, no?
Yeah.
Right? From here to fracture point, if there is a lot of strain that happened, right? So if the graph was extended till here, like, right? Then a large amount of strain or large amount of deformation has happened between elastic limit and fracture point, right? Then that material is not breaking very quickly. It is getting stretched a lot, right? That is a ductile material, right? And if this is close by, it is here only breaking point is there, right? Correct? Then that means that the material cannot be stretched too long, right? It breaks before it stretches, right? So that is called a non-ductile material, right? So now he has given the case for rubber. Rubber behaves slightly differently, okay? So distinctly different stress-strain relationship exists for vulcanized rubber. Vulcanized is a process of chemically treating the rubber a little bit. So it basically acquires some elastic properties and it hardens also as a result. So we'll not worry about the vulcanization. We'll see the curve that happens when stress and strain curve, right? So he's saying the material remains elastic when it is stretched to over several times its original length. So it can be stretched to 2 or 3 times its normal length, right? Original length, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
In the case shown in the figure, the length is increased to 8 times its natural length. Even then, if the stretching forces are removed, it will come back to its normal length, original length.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in this respect, rubber is more elastic than a ductile metal like steel. However, the magnitude of stress for a given strain is much larger in steel than in rubber. So obviously, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Stress required to stretch steel, right?
Yeah.
Will be much higher
Much
by
higher than
steel
rubber.
into delta L by L, right?
Yeah.
This for steel will be much higher than that required for rubber, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
we know from physical experience, right?
Yeah.
However, what happens is this ratio for steel is quite small, but for rubber it is almost 8 or something also is possible, right?
Yeah.
However, the difference in stress happens because Y of steel is very high, right?
Yeah.
However, the magnitude of stress for a given strain is much larger in steel than in rubber. This means large internal forces appear if steel wire is deformed, right? This stress
Yeah.
is what? This stress is force by area, no?
Yeah.
So we know that force that appears in steel wire will be much larger than force that appears in rubber, right?
Rubber. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct. So he's saying one thing which is important. He's saying in this sense, steel is more elastic than rubber. In what sense? In the sense that strong elastic forces are generated in the steel wire, right? As a response to a strain, very large forces are generated in a steel wire as compared to rubber wire, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So in that sense, steel is more elastic than rubber.
Yeah.
In the other sense, when you talk about strain, obviously rubber is more elastic than steel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you mean by elasticity, if you mean how much it stretches, then obviously rubber is more
Rubber.
elastic.
Yeah.
But if you mean what kind of elastic forces are being generated inside as a result of a strain, right? Then steel is more elastic, you can say.
Elastic. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Basically, elastic is an English word that has multiple connotations in different situations. So it depends on what you're talking about. Basically, Young's modulus of steel will be much higher than Young's modulus of rubber, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
you can say that modulus of elasticity of steel is higher, so steel is more elastic, right? In the other sense, correct?
Yeah.
So now he's talking about two important phenomena to note from figure 14.8. First is, in no part of this large deformation is stress is proportional to strain. So anyway, there's no straight line anywhere, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So stress and strain are not proportional to each other for rubber, right? So there is almost no region of proportionality. Okay. Secondly, when the deforming force is removed, the original curve is not retraced. Although the sample finally acquires its natural length, the new curve is a different curve. Okay.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So if you remove the strain, right? If you remove the stress, then the length decreases, but it decreases in a different path. Okay. So normally it's stretched like this, but it comes back to its natural length in this way. What does that mean? That when it is reducing its strain, right? While returning back, when its strain would have been this, its stress was this value rather than this value.
Yeah.
There are two competing values, no? Force here, force initial and force final here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it was retracing its path, when it was decreasing its strain, it should have followed this trajectory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
actually follows this trajectory, right? It will come back to its normal length, but the forces involved are now different, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the work done by the material in returning to its original shape is less than the work done by the deforming force when it was deformed. Why? Because you can see that stress is force by area and strain is del L by L, right? Correct.
Yeah.
So, work done, in some sense, is it the area under this curve? Let's think about it. This is a dimensionless quantity. That is the problem. Right now, if I take area under the curve, it should be stress into strain, right?
Right.
The unit should be stress into strain units. So what can we do? Oh, actually you need a force graph here and you need a displacement graph here, right? For work done.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So fine. Right now it is not obvious that we can take just area under the curve here. But from the figure, it seems like this area under the curve is smaller than this area under the curve, no?
Yeah.
While it got deformed, area under curve here, I mean, what happens is stress into strain into volume is going to be the work. Volume, if you multiply, it will have units of area into length is cancel out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So it will have force into meter, it should have. Actually, this is dimensionless. So if you multiply by volume, you'll get force into meter, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you just think about this product is the work done, right?
Right, yeah.
Right.
So assuming that volume remains constant, volume of the material should remain constant. You're not changing volume right now. You're changing length and all, right?
Length, yeah.
Right? So the product of stress and strain itself is going to sort of tell you the work done. Not exactly, but work done per unit volume it is telling, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Like finally, if you multiply the volume and stress and strain, you get force into meter or joules, right?
Right, yeah.
But volume is fixed for this material in this entire
Yeah.
transformation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So stress into strain product itself is what? Work by volume, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So stress into strain product is area under this curve, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see that while deformation area under the curve was higher, while
Yeah.
returning area under the curve is lower, right?
Yeah.
Correct. So work done during deformation is higher than work that you got back or energy that was released when it went back to its natural situation, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So a particular amount of energy is thus absorbed by the material in the cycle, right? Some amount of energy has been kept back, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
you gave it some energy to do work like this, no?
Yeah.
And it returned only this much energy when it came back, right?
Yeah.
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 So it has absorbed some amount of energy, right?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Which appears as heat. It becomes hotter and hotter as you keep doing this stretching and leaving it, right? Rubber will become hotter and hotter. Okay. This phenomena is called elastic hysteresis. Elastic hysteresis, where basically the amount of energy that is released during a return to the normal length is not the same as the amount of energy absorbed, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So elastic hysteresis has an important application in shock absorbers. If a padding of vulcanized rubber is given between a vibrating system and say a flat board, right? The rubber is compressed and released in every cycle of vibration, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
energy is absorbed in the rubber in each cycle, only a part of the energy of vibrations is transmitted to the board, right? So basically, if there is a machine and it has a vibrating part and a fixed part, and you want the fixed part to not be vibrating, right?
Yeah.
So you want to basically absorb those vibrations and not let the vibrations affect the fixed part, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You can put rubber shock absorbers in between those parts. And what will happen is each time that vibrating part vibrates, the rubber takes away some fraction of it, the vibrational energy, right?
Right, yeah.
So not all of the vibrational energy is transferred to the board, right? Because of this elastic hysteresis phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is important and important to understand the curves. Okay, because questions now will be quite application oriented, and they might give you detailed curves and ask you something, right? So you need to understand what is going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then 14.7 is elastic potential energy of a strained body, right? So this is not very hard. So basically, he's talking about if a body has a certain amount of extension, what is the potential energy stored in that body at that moment, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a figure 14.9 where there is a normal length body, and it is undergoing some force F, right? It is having some longitudinal force. As a
Yeah.
result of which it extends a little bit, and right now extension is, let's say, X, and force at this moment here will be AY by L into X, right?
X. Yeah.
Right, because stress by strain is Y. So here this was L, original length, and this is extension, right? X.
Yeah.
Yeah.
X.
Correct. So now what you will do is, see, he's saying, suppose a wire having natural length L and cross-sectional area A is fixed at one end and is stretched by an external force applied at the other end. The force is so adjusted that the wire is only slowly stretched. Okay, slowly you are stretching it, right? This ensures that at any time during the extension, the external force equals the tension in the wire, right? Tension in the wire must equal the extension, right? Otherwise, if the force is unbalanced, there should be motion with acceleration, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That will not happen. You're doing it slowly. So external force is equal to the tension in the wire, right? So when the extension is X, the wire is under a longitudinal stress F by A, where F is the tension at this time. The strain is X by L. So F is equal to AY by L into X.
Yeah.
Now work done by the external force in a further extension of dx, like if you stretch it further by dx, right? The work done by external force will be F dx. dw is work done by external force. Right?
Yeah. FD.
And that is equal to AY by L x dx, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now work done from original to this point, right? Correct.
Yeah.
So he's saying total work by the external force in an extension from 0 to L, right? W total will be 0 to L extension, AY by capital L x dx, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that will be AY by capital L into L square by 2, right? So this much potential energy should be stored in the wire, right? Because this much external work was done on the wire, right?
Yeah.
Correct. This much potential energy has to be stored in the wire. So work done is equal to potential energy stored is equal to AY by 2 capital L into L square, right? Now you can write this nicely in a way. You can say half into AY into L by small l by capital L multiplied by small l, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So this is the force at this maximum stretching force, no? AY small l by L will be the stretching force when the extension was L, right?
Yeah.
Half into F maximum stretching force, right? Into extension at that moment, right?
Right.
So that is the potential energy stored. You could also write it in a different way, half into Y into L by L into L by L into AL. So now see LL cancels and it is half AY L square by L, right? 2L.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Which is the same thing that was there earlier, right?
Yeah.
In this case, however, what you can say is this part is, this is Young's modulus and this is strain, right? So stress, this is stress, no? Stress is equal to Young's modulus into strain, no? And this is strain, right? L by L is strain.
Correct. Yeah.
And this is A into L is total volume, right?
Total volume.
Yeah.
So half into stress into strain into volume is the potential energy in the body. Okay. So that is why, because this is potential energy or this is external work done, right? That is why in the previous elastic hysteresis section, I was saying stress and strain into volume is work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So earlier also we were using this.
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
how has he done this? He has taken the force external to be equal to the tension at any moment, and he has done, let's stretch it by further dx. So basically work done in that tiny stretch would be f dx, which is ay by L into x dx. And now do that from 0 to L extension, right?
Yeah.
So that is the total work done or potential energy stored, right?
Yeah.
And it can be written in multiple forms. It can be written like this, or easy to remember is this one. Okay. This is the potential energy stored when it is half into stress into strain into volume, final everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 14.8 is determination of Young's modulus in the laboratory. That is fine. That you can read that experiment. 14.9 to 14.14 and all. 14.9 to 14 is the slightly difficult portion of this chapter. Okay. Which is the surface tension part. Surface tension and height of capillary tubes. Height in capillary. Surface tension and length of a column in a capillary tube. You guys have done this in Talon?
Yeah.
So what have they explained in surface tension? What is surface tension?
Suspension is like the liquid surface will have tendency to have the least total surface area.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
So
sphere.
So why do they have this tendency?
to like what is it? Reduce total area that is exposed to the surroundings.
But that the question is, why do they have this tendency? That is just someone saying a fact to you, right? But why? Why do they want to reduce surface area? Why not increase surface area?
Uh,
When was this done? 1 or 2 months ago. When was this done?
Yeah.
yeah. Around 1 or 2 months back.
And they have not had, they had tests which would have covered this, right? Surface tension and all. On Wednesday's test was what was the syllabus for physics?
It was
Full portion.
So surface tension questions were there.
surface tension. There were no questions.
Uh-huh.
As far as I remember, there were no surface tension questions.
But they have had several tests
Yeah.
of surface tension being in the syllabus, right?
Yeah.
So what have they taught? Like, what have you guys learned? Like, other than just knowing that it reduces surface area, like, why? Have you guys understood why, what is going on properly? No.
Not fully. Like.
Okay, so basically what you should do is read this section 14.9 till 14.14. These 5 sections are the most difficult that you will see so far in mechanics. And you cannot be like casually reading it, okay?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it is also super important because these days they have started asking surface tension questions in advanced, and this is not easy. So read it carefully, line by line, whatever he's saying, try to understand what he's saying. You have not read HCV for this, right?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so basically you have to read HCV. I will do this. I will do it in a class when you have already read it once.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Read it once. I will not start it now. We'll do it in the next class. When you read it once, after that we'll discuss it. It's important also and not very easy. So we have to understand it carefully.
Yeah.
So after that 14.14 onwards, beyond that viscosity part and all is easy. 14.15 till 14.20 in this chapter is easy. There's no issue there. Those are easy parts. Everything before this part was also easy only. the elasticity stuff.
Yeah.
The surface tension and capillary tube stuff is the difficult portion, which you need to carefully understand. So let's read it once and then we'll do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. I'll see you on tomorrow. Also, we can probably do a class. That probably tomorrow or no, Tuesday. Definitely, we're doing a class. Maybe Tuesday and Wednesday we'll do.
Yeah.
So Tuesday and Wednesday, one class will be physics, one will be chemistry. Okay. So,
Okay, yeah.
and then Thursday will be maths. So we'll continue from there. I want to finish off this chapter in 2 classes or 1 class, maybe 2 classes. So by next week, end of next week, we should finish this chapter and then I can start thermodynamics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So read up and come before the next physics class.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all then for now. I'll see you.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Yes, sir.